Hello and welcome to the Foxhole of Full Battle Rattle podcast, the show that brings you the real-time, on-the-ground true perspectives and latest information. I'm your host, Chief One Officer Taj Keeler. Now, let's log on. Our guest today is Sergeant First Class Nicholas Rice, the creator of the Comprehensive Tactical Athlete System, an operational concept bridge to bridge the holistic health and fitness system into all aspects of Army life, leadership, and just overall styles. Welcome, Sergeant First Class Rice. Thank you for joining us, and we're honored to have you. Just take a few minutes of your time to share your thoughts, your experiences, your histories. Welcome to the Foxhole Podcast.
Thank you, sir. Really glad to be here and to be able to be a part of what you're trying to do, spreading the message to soldiers.
I'm glad you're here. The holistic health system is it's big. It's almost big to where it scares people. So can you tell the audience about your military background, your experience in your assignments, and how you got into the H2F system?
Absolutely. And, you start with a really good point on kind of the scope of H2F. I think providing some perspective will help, especially with getting into my background. The Army's always cared about its people. We've always tried to find some ways to help the soldiers within our formations. So holistic health and fitness isn't necessarily something that's new, but it is a new approach.
Okay.
We've had many programs throughout my years of service. I've been in approximately 19 years, throughout your service as well, that have been here to help soldiers through difficult times, to prepare them before those events happen. But what H2F is meant to do is to kind of bring all of those under a specific umbrella and provide leaders a good resource to be able to help them better serve their soldiers. Everything under servant leadership, everything under people first, that is H2F, and they can only be realized through H2F. And, it can be difficult, especially with our population, when we're talking about reservists, which is where my background comes in. I joined the Army when I was still a junior in high school, and I was in JROTC. I thought, and even at the time, I'd be doing Army for the rest of my life, and I'm still here. Went to basic at Fort Jackson, AIT at Fort Lee. And when I came back from training, I was a TPU soldier.
Okay.
Right? That weekend warrior.
Mm-hmm.
2 days a month is what they told me, and 2 weeks out of the year. I went to college for software engineering. I married very young, actually, and was pretty successful. Ended up even starting my own business around 23, and had a house purchased by 24. There were times where I could work 2 or 3 hours a day at a point and kind of move on. And I didn't come from any type of wealthy or privileged background, so I didn't grow up with much. And in 2013, I received an email conversation from a command sergeant major that I knew because I was fit and because I was already an Army instructor doing quite well. And they said, hey, you know what? The Army just brought back its Master Fitness Trainer course, and civilians are running it. But we want to switch over to green suiters teaching it. Would you be interested in attending the course and, from the reserve perspective, starting this course to be able to teach soldiers about MFT? And I had no idea what MFT was.
At all.
Not at all. I'd never heard about it.
Right.
I was someone that enjoyed exercise but didn't necessarily have a background in it. And I thought, you know what, everything's going well for me, but let me try this out. So I went to Fort Jackson, and it was a 4-week course at the time. I believe within the end of the first week, my entire perspective on life had changed.
Did you say the first time was 4 weeks long?
It was. When I went to the course, it was a 4-week course, primarily to train drill sergeants with physical readiness training.
Okay.
To help them for the IET environment. It started more when it came back, because it was a legacy course in the 90s. It was discontinued in 2001. Obviously, we had conflicts to fight, and we had things that we needed to be able to do. And it was brought back in 2012. At the time, it was they had civilian contractors from a company called Anotics that would teach. So they had strength coaches, dietitians, physical therapists, occupational therapists as teams to go and educate drill sergeants on how they can better approach physical training, diet, sleep, a lot of things that we're talking about now for H2F. But for IETs and for soldiers back in their regular unit, it wasn't for Reserve and National Guard soldiers to do any of this. So within that curriculum, in the end of that first week, I had an epiphany. it was the first experience that I had in the Army where I was receiving information that I could use outside of uniform. They were teaching me how I can eat optimally, how I can move optimally, how I can achieve my goals. And I was that person in shape that people would always come up to. And I think by the time I had that epiphany, I wanted to go back to all of the people I'd helped and say, I'm sorry. Because I just didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing was inefficient, or that I could have been hurting people with the way I was training them. I didn't know. And it changed everything for me. And before that 4-week was up, I completely agreed that this is what I wanted to do. So moving forward, I actually stopped my own business, and I continued on with the MFT course. So the rest of from the end of 2013 through 2014, I helped teach the 4-week course as an assistant instructor with the civilians. We had the first transition into the DL and kind of 2-phase MFT course, so that we had a 2-week resident and the initial phase 1 distance learning. And we scrubbed all of that, wrote the program instruction, the POI, and we opened the 2-week schoolhouses, the 3 for National Guard, the 1 reserve, at the time I was at Fort Knox, and then the 1 in Fort Jackson in October 2014. And the rest is kind of written. I continued teaching the course from that point all the way through August 2021. And it's the best experience I've had in my life.
Wait, let's go back, because you glossed over this really quick. So you had your own business.
Yes.
Then you went to the 4-week MFT course, the Madden Fitness Training course. And after completion of that course, you realized that this is something that you wanted to do, where you stopped your business. So you truly have a passion.
Oh, yes.
For Master Fitness Training and the impacts that it can give to soldiers, families, and just overall anyone who chooses to accept the information. That's impressive. I didn't know that about you this whole time.
But and what you said is the key. It's how the information could be used. To me, it wasn't, and the same thing I try to impart on my students for the approximately 8 to 9 years that I taught the course is, we're not trying to help you understand how do you come to a battle assembly for the reserve, or M-Day for National Guard, or even day-to-day for your active duty component, and know how to do a push-up better, or learn how to bench press and squat. We teach those things, but that's not the point.
Right.
The point is, you move every day of your life. You eat every day of your life. You're going to sleep. You're going to communicate with other human beings. You're going to encounter stress and hard times. How do you have control over managing that internally? And then how do we take a better understanding of these human behaviors? How do we optimize all of this, not for the sake of optimization, not for the sake of checking a block and making sure something's done? How do we make sure that readiness is the subsequent effect to us having healthy, intelligent, and well-intentioned human beings? Mm-hmm. That's how I took the information. And that's what really changed everything for me. So I went back, even starting the Master Fitness Trainer course in Fort Knox in 2014. There was only 5 of us doing that. We weren't under another necessarily command structure. We didn't have staff. We didn't have anything else. So we did everything. And even at that time, I decided, if I'm going to be presenting information to other humans, I can't just teach POI. I need to do me. So running that schoolhouse from scratch, I also started going to school again. I ended up actually enrolling in online school and going to community college simultaneously while teaching the course full-time, in order to get my exercise science degree, and then working on professional certifications, primarily through the National Strength and Conditioning Association, the NCA. And from the beginning to end, without taking a very long time with it, now I'm at a point where I've trained over 6,000 leaders in the Army, all compos, all walks of life. And I've had the conversation every single time with these human beings, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, of, hey, what problems are you seeing within your organization? What problems are you seeing, at home or internally? Having trouble recovering from certain injuries, or having trouble just meeting this life goal, and helping people through one-on-one dialogue understand how they can grab onto that locus of control to improve themselves. And you don't, at least from me, and I'm biased of course, but you change from that. You don't go back from seeing people want to change everything about themselves. So throughout all of that, I was in pursuit of my doctorate of physical therapy. I had done clinics with VA and through other military and civilian components to try and help people through different things. For about 2 years, I trained one of my dogs and got certified as a pet therapist. So we'd go to libraries and I'd help foster childhood literacy, and I try to do the same thing for resilience with children. And all of it to me is the same thing. All of it comes together on looking at human beings and helping them take care of themselves and giving them the information to do that. And that's why coming here to First MSC 166, RSG in Fort Buchanan, coming to Puerto Rico, I couldn't just leave all that aside. I'm not an MFT instructor anymore, but that doesn't mean that as a leader or just as a human being, how do I create a sphere of influence to better help people? And so I wanted to do that through holistic health and fitness, and to kind of expand outside of just what that is, I wanted to help create the comprehensive tactical athlete system so that we can operationalize the logistical part of H2F, the administrative part of H2F, everything that we do to make sure we're taking care of our human beings in uniform as much as possible.
So the interesting approach of how you are able to take your experiences from the schoolhouse, and even when you said in your introduction how when personnel will come to you and ask for assistance with working out and things of that nature, and at the time you wanted to go back, that what you know now, you want to go back and apologize and say, hey.
Yeah.
But now that you have all this information, how do we apply the concept of the CTAS program to our force?
Oh, the strategic problem.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
Well, especially with reservists, it's difficult because we have several weeks worth of tasks to complete in 2 days. It's not an easy nor quick approach.
Okay.
So what we're working on right now within the 166 for our brigade is exactly to that question. How do we create resources for the leaders to access, to be able to use, and then educate them on the utilization of those resources to be able to change what they're already doing, or if I can use a different phrase, just modify what they're already doing in order to help it be more efficient toward that human being. So for some perspective, when I moved here from the schoolhouse, I was positioned as a battalion operations NCO. And I maintained and did my duty as admirably as I felt I could, but also tried to implement this holistic health and fitness system here. What I saw consistently from a battalion ops position with 13 units is we have a lot of struggle with communication, but there's also so many things to do. We are almost conditioned to be reactive to the point where when our soldiers arrive on a battle assembly for a weekend, they arrive and even sometimes the senior leaders are like, okay, what are we doing? And then while they're figuring it out, or while they're trying to accommodate toward an entire BA potentially being taken away from them through whatever mandatory tasks, then their soldiers are standing around or sitting around on their phone wondering what they're going to do. And if you survey them, none of them signed up for that. None of them wanted to join the military just to sit around and not do anything. And I don't think it's necessarily all the leader's fault. It's the conditioning of the environment. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create a leadership education platform, both digitally and strategically throughout each functional year, that follows things like rearm, depending on where each unit is in that rearm cycle, and that takes it to how do we look at individual training toward collective training and build on leadership with the understanding of holistic health and fitness. How do we embed an individual that I can train, or I can train people to train, in every platoon, in every detachment, to be a active embedded resource for squad leaders to do their primary job, which is serve soldiers. And I think if we can kind of do that, and that's scalable, right? That's something that we could do at the battalion and brigade and command level, even to other commanders, the battalion commander, brigade commander, to first sergeant CSMs. It's not always just about the junior enlisted soldiers. We are all human beings. And to pull all together, when I was an ops NCO, I would sit down at these meetings. I would have 12 to 15 meetings a week on us going to a range. And we talk about, okay, how many vehicles do we have names for those seats? Is the ammo going to be there? And are we bringing enough tents? Which is good. We need to cover the logistical and the maintenance pieces. But at no point in time were we ever talking about the human being. At no point in time were we talking about, okay, how are we ensuring that we're looking after these humans that are going to be driving? Right? We're talking about doing driver's training to make sure they're licensed. Well, how much of that involves the technical and tactical skill, or their understanding of how much sleep they need to be able to perform that? How do we discuss when they are not doing these other things to prepare the squad leaders time where they can just sit down and have conversations human to human, which would be something like the spiritual domain, and connect? We have this time where they're finally together, because a lot of times TPU soldiers, they have other lives. They have civilian jobs. They can't just focus on the military. So when we have them, we don't take full advantage of that resource to be like, okay, how do you sit down and have a conversation with these human beings that you're supposed to be leading and understand them better so you can communicate with them better? And it's not their fault if they don't know how to. I didn't know how to. So I want to train people that know how to, so the squad leaders have someone they can go to. And I want to train the squad leaders enough to make them autonomous, so when they can train their soldiers to become autonomous. And as they move up in the ranks and things of that nature, it hopefully becomes more of a fluid process, just like we do for normal leadership and mentoring. Train the person to train the person, but now with a more insightful manner with regards to human beings.
So it just goes back to that whole build. CTAS is not to take a unit outside of a cycle or create additional tasks. It's incorporating inside of your task to get you a part of your rearm cycle and whatever year that in. But I believe that most soldiers or leaders will hear the CTAS program as an additional duty.
Oh, yes.
Instead of the incorporation of how do we build in CTAS in our everyday tasks, which is our medals, because that's what we're going to be
Exactly.
We're supposed to be doing medals, but however, H2F is a part of your medal.
Yes, it is.
So how do we get past that stigma of that iceberg of we don't want additional duty, but instead of thinking about how can we build and maximize our soldiers' time?
No, these are the questions, the key questions, and there's no easy answer to complex problems, as you're well aware. I've always thought and wished that we could get across good information and useful information as easy as misinformation. Myths and rumors will spread so fast
Quickly.
but you can't get the positive information out there. It's challenging. I think some of it can come from repetition. To a lot of individuals, H2F is new. They haven't heard about it, and it maybe because it hasn't been forced, and I don't really like that word. To me, holistic health and fitness started, I think, in 2015 with a few colonels, another senior NCO, myself, and a couple of whiteboards. And working, again, with Master Fitness Trainer course and a lot of other very intelligent people, much more credentialed than I am over time. And now it's this massive thing that it was announced through executive order in 2018. Right, so 5 years ago, this has been running. Operating concept came out in 2020. So we're still 3 years out from that point, and yet we'll still have conversations with people that haven't heard about it. Now, and we can't affect the entire Army like that. So luckily, there are pieces that are being in play. Like for TRADOC, as an example, every level of PME for enlisted, commission, and warrant is starting to involve holistic health and fitness within their program of instructions, or POI. Even all the way down to, it's already being put in IET. That's already been done. So for soldiers that are coming back from basic and IET, whether they fully remember or not, they're they're being introduced to consistently holistic health and fitness. And then I think as it's consistently being pushed out through PME, and then units start understanding, which is the challenge to your question, how do, for the reservists, the full-time staff start integrating what they're already doing under a holistic health and fitness mindset? And again, really, it's just looking at the people. It's hard because we need to be able to stop the vehicle that we're riding in order to fix that wheel. And with our op tempo, it seems like we can't stop. If I stop, I fail. But then we fail all the time, which is interesting to me. And then we never do, or from my perspective at least, we never seem to do a proper analysis of why we failed and how we can keep failing in the future. And I don't mean a 5, 20, 30-minute AAR. I mean doing a full analysis on, was what we were trying to do effective? And if it wasn't, then let's do something else. I consistently observe, and not just in our command, let me be very specific. I communicate with individuals all across, not only the reserve, but even an active component have similar issues, where we keep conditioning ourselves to do something or rather we keep doing something, we've conditioned ourselves that that's what we need to do, and we just kind of follow within the momentum. And that may not be something we can change, or at least not in any type of short time. But I think that if we can provide people the information to be able to instill that purpose or help them find that purpose, to try and combat that ignorance, and then make it repetitive and regular, make it a routine thing for them, then it'll start to kind of fill in that gap. And luckily, that's what we're doing here. We have phenomenal commanders here that are fully championing H2F and CSCS. Every time I've had a chance to talk to company commanders, battalion commanders, or brigade commanders,
excited about it.
Oh man!
Once they hear the information, they
I hear whatever you need, we can make this happen. Let's get to the soldiers. And so the commanders are excited about it. When I talk to soldiers, they're excited about it. There seems to be kind of a layer in between that's keeping it from seeming to be effective and to get that momentum rolling. So we're trying to address that and find out what that is. But overall, I think once we can get that routine piece and soldiers see that holistic health and fitness and the comprehensive tactical athlete system, it's not PT. It's not the ACFT. It's not your height and weight. It's your life. It's who you are. It's your engagement with your family. Exactly. Every single thing that you're doing in your life, it can be beneficial or more beneficial. It could be aided by understanding these concepts better. And I think we have really good teams here. Everything that you're doing are actually our chaplain corps here as well for the spiritual domain. And I'm not even talking about the religious services they provide, but just connecting people and families together. They are absolutely incredible. And trying to link them up with our family programs, trying to link them up with ACS on post, and trying to link up FMWR, all of these services that exist for soldiers, and even outside of Fort Buchanan, right? How do we find ways to develop our community so that reserve soldiers don't expect that their responsibility lies in putting on the uniform on a random weekend, getting a task done, and then forgetting about it into the next piece. Without providing them, these are more responsibilities for you. And instead, these are more resources for you. And this is where you can find it. We want to let them know we're here for them. My entire role as a senior leader is to serve every soldier within a specific sphere of influence that I can get to. And I'm trying to expand that as much as possible to help people, because to me, there's no more noble mission than helping people. And if I have information and I hoard it or I don't, it's not about me.
Right.
It's not about putting my name out there. It's not about me receiving anything. It's about helping other human beings. And I think once we start instilling that's how it can be, and that's what leaders can get out of it and how they can use it, then I may be a little bit biased, but I think it'll help start spreading some more.
But that's fair to be biased. And then as we transition with CSCS, a lot of leaders have a tendency to separate themselves from training.
Oh, yes.
I.e., when it's ACFT, the soldiers are going to take it. If it's the range, the soldiers are going to go to the range. Or if it's convoy operation, the soldiers are going. But as a leader, we're apart. And using CSCS, how can CSCS impact all soldiers? Because leaders, we have our own struggles, we have our own challenges, we have our own things that we have to build and continue to invest and fill our cups. Mm-hmm. But as a leader, we tend to go to our own island by using verbiage, unconscious verbiage, separating yourself from the formation, and not even knowing that you're acknowledging the fact of that, hey, I just separated myself from my soldiers. And I just separated myself from what makes the Army of the Army is a group, a community of people or human beings working together for a common good.
Absolutely.
So how does CSCS impact all soldiers, no matter the rank, no matter the time in service, all soldiers?
I think because it's not tied to a duty position. It's not tied to a title. We're not discussing, Private Rice is the operator of this bumper number vehicle and therefore needs to take care of this piece of equipment. We're not discussing, Sergeant Rice is a human resource NCO and therefore needs to get this specific paperwork done. We already have field manuals that discuss what those roles for staff and positions are and are building into those. I think, and it's funny and sad how you bring it up, because I think the very first the very first conversation I tried to have with the senior leader before I started briefing it just casually on this, complete buy-in. But their first response was, well, this is wonderful. Okay, so let's get all the E5s together and let's get them to train the people that are failing height and weight in ACFT. And it's well-intentioned. And that's another challenge. I'm not trying to say leaders are not taking care of their soldiers, because they do. They want to make sure their soldiers aren't homeless and their soldiers are getting paid. And there's so many ways to take care of leaders. But sometimes the buck stops after that. I want individuals, and what I'm striving to do through the championship of the commanders here, is to get both of them and their staff and the other senior leaders to understand, even if we got your full buy-in to engage the soldiers and create a reconditioning program, and we ended up coming for PT or something, and all the senior leaders aren't participating because they haven't developed the self-efficacy to understand that they can improve. They think they stepped on a rock wrong 40 years ago and there's no way to recover, even though they'll see their favorite athlete completely tear an ACL and come back in the game in 6-7 months. There's been such a separation of capabilities that we end up confusing ourselves and tricking ourselves to believe that change isn't possible. And you've heard it, right? I'm 40, I can't do this anymore. The Army's beat me up for 20 years, and all I have to look forward to now is a VA percentage. And I'm not trying to say that people shouldn't, get help. You need to be able to get help. That's a huge part of what we're doing. And if you are hurt, then, go to the VA. But we've incentivized individuals not getting better, and we're trying to change that. We need the leaders to kind of set the example. If a young specialist, a young sergeant, a private sees E8s as the crusty E8, or warrant officers as they're never around.
Take it easy now. Getting personal.
Right? If that's the perception, then we can they'll have the confirmation bias if the leaders aren't there.
Facts.
Consistently. But if you have, and you see the Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major of the Army Reserve do this all the time. You see Lieutenant General Daniels do it all the time. They're out there with the soldiers. They're out there not for some type of picture opportunity and video opportunity. They're out there doing training with soldiers, and that can start with PT, which doesn't have to be done in the day. In the first part of the day, right? PT can be done at any point in time of day. But that you're taking this opportunity for people to come together as a team, and then continue working as a team throughout the rest of the day. That includes the senior leadership. I want the company commander to be able to communicate with their first sergeant in the same way that a squad leader is going to be communicating with their squad member. The degree of experience and that level of partnership due to the seniority is going to modify some parts of that conversation, of course. But whoever that person's raider is, that raider serves that soldier. Mm-hmm. Rank doesn't absolve them of that responsibility. So how does the command sergeant major help of a brigade help battalion command sergeant majors by taking that human being and applying holistic health and fitness? How does the brigade commander do that with the battalion commanders? How do we take the same exact thing we expect the soldiers at the lowest level for this is my squad and all these other initiatives trying to do, and repeat that? And I believe even just the practice of trying kind of opens the door for their expectations on what can be done. Because sometimes we get removed.
Makes sense.
Right? When we get in these higher positions, we think, okay, you just need to do this, go ahead and do this. But at the soldier, this and that don't mean the same thing going in 1 year. Their interpretation of it, their perception of it, and everything else that they see, it may not line up the same way. So I think the additional, subsequent and ancillary, or the additional benefits of commanders getting involved, to your point, and putting that in both policy structure, because we're the Army, but also practice through CTAS will help push everything along.
And policy structure or sources where soldiers can obtain the information.
Oh, yes.
And more than the board that's in the command room, but on all platforms, because H2F is a foundational principle that is applicable to all situations.
Absolutely.
So the platform should be as many ways of communication, even from text messages to your platforms of going back to the traditional voicemail. You can leave a soldier a voicemail of encouragement the same way that you can leave a text message, because voice is different,
Yes.
just the overall aspect of how we view H2F and the program of CTAS and how it's applicable to any situation if a leader takes the opportunity to see how or when or what or maybe get some advice on the best way to continue to spread H2F. And it's more in a way of an everyday basis, even in your planning, in your meetings. How do you start your meetings off? Is MRTs available? This different things, and I'm not talking about a long speech of 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but a 2 to 3 minute clip, 2 to 3 minute poem, or even when the chaplains get involved and they'll say, bring a spoken word up, before the meeting, a prayer. There's so many ways that CTAS and H2F can really affect our formation.
Absolutely, and I'm really glad you brought that up with some of the chaplain pieces. I'm trying to push that more even than within our command. They have the similar challenges when we're looking at, okay, H2F and CTAS are just physical, and then when people see chaplains, they think, well, either I'm not religious or I don't need a religious service, or the only other time I see chaplains used is as a response, as a reactionary response to something bad going on. And they're so well trained. They have a huge background that benefits leaders that are never really being proactively used that I see. I never see a chaplain at the table for meetings when we're going to go do collective training events. I don't see commanders and it's not necessarily the chaplain's fault because we're all products of conditioning. We're conditioning the chaplains to, we'll tell you when we need you and when there's a problem. And they have their own requirements and restraints. Commanders aren't taking their UMTs, including their chaplain's assistants, including the religious affairs specialists, and trying to integrate them with their particular specialties before there's a problem, then we're going to continue having problems. And we can do that. It's one of the beauties of the reserves. Right? We have individuals of such amazing skill sets and scopes. So many individuals that have degrees and at enlisted ranks that you never see in active duty. We have people running businesses that have been running businesses for 20 years, wherein you may have a senior leader in active duty that has never worked really in the civilian realm and is fearful of it for when they're going to get out, while ours are doing that simultaneously. And I don't think we leverage that enough, the incredible capability of the people within our population. I can't tell you any time I've ever observed or known of a unit within the reserves where there was enough time put on a schedule or just allotted to the leaders where they could sit down and see what capabilities do we have just in our formation right now.
Organically to us.
Yeah. What capabilities do our soldiers have to leverage, not in a way to use them, but to capitalize on all of the hard work that they put in outside of this BA and acknowledge them for it, right? 638s, give individuals awards, fill out their NCERs and OERs, make them feel worthwhile, that they have something they can bring to the table. They're not just here to respond to what you need them to do. We are here for them. They are why we exist. How do we figure out what they can do? And for us, we're providing resources for them to help them, obviously be better humans, but how do we take their capabilities and then apply that to organization and make a community out of the people within, our ranks?
And also to shape tomorrow. Those simple conversations, maximizing resources, just the ability for one soldier to feel valued, what that can do for tomorrow. And Absolutely. Then what tomorrow brings for the next, and so forth. It's just amazing. So what's the next step for CTAS?
Right now, because we are in a lot of early development pieces for a Compo 3 H2F system, what we're looking at with our comprehensive tactical system through CTAS is observing all of our current upcoming operations, the normal operations we're trying to do to be able to look at soldiers with their collective training events and things like that, and finding ways we can, in the meantime, interject just different pieces of H2F. We're trying to take that slow approach because there's already so much going on, and we don't want to over-inundate leaders, or at least that's the perception of it, and we really can't fight that perception if we want to be successful. We are currently running the only active holistic health and fitness pilot within any functional command in the Army Reserve. So I'm training a team of junior NCOs to serve as that bridge, similar to when I would train Master Fitness Trainer course instructors, so that they can reach out to individuals selected by commanders at the platoon level and educate them, as we spoke about earlier, and trying to create those subject matter experts, trying to give them the practice and the information that they need. Then simultaneously, we're currently working actually on a website to provide a resource that soldiers and leaders can come to for information. Because as of right now, other than sending a message through a mobile application or someone potentially coming across something on social media, there's no resource for soldiers to access, to find out what's going on in the command, what's going on in any of these areas. And there's so many things going on.
Right.
So we're working on the website platform. We're working on a digital education platform for those people that are going to be placed in those positions. I've written all the lesson plans for that. I'm writing lesson plans to kind of bridge the gap operationally for all staff members, other ones for leaders. And then we have incredible initiatives like the things that you're doing and like this podcast to try and bring information to the soldier. So that the next steps for CTAS are improving awareness and access, so we can create the behavioral conditions around soldiers either being hungry for information or at least knowing where to go and knowing that it exists. Because once that bridge is kind of gapped, once we start laying down that foundation, we already know some of the things we need to do to take care of them, right? If soldiers start coming and asking information, now the leaders need to provide that information. So we have the information for the leaders. We're trying to get the soldiers to search for it. And over time, I think we're going to develop the people first army that we're really looking for. We want to be able to develop the entire idea of the Army Reserves, right? Ready now and shaping tomorrow.
Absolutely. So the purpose of this podcast is to connect leaders to soldiers and soldiers to leaders. And unfortunately, it's a necessary thing that in our assignment as AGRs or as a leader in whatever position that you're in for, there's a start and there's a finish.
Oh, yes.
So when you're finished here at the 166 RSG, what is that one thing that you want to leave with soldiers or you want to leave with this command?
Oh, question I wasn't prepared for.
I know.
That's difficult. Continuity is the first word that comes to my mind, but it's hard. I can't recreate my 10 to 12 years of doing this and impart it within a TPU in the year and 4 months I have left. I'm hoping that my next steps are to continue H2F 4 Army Reserve, and then I can still be a conduit for the development and information for the 1st MSC as well as other commands. I believe trying to get people curious and let them know all of these things that seem like it's too much. This vague, complex, massive scope about fixing all human beings and all problems, that it's not about trying to stop our work right now, start tomorrow and do it all differently. But that change is possible. And we have the resources for it. It's doctrine now, right? It's been out there. How do we start? And I think right now the big part for CTAS is that we're starting by taking that next step. If I can impart anything on the leaders moving forward and leave something else in this command, is that the hardest, most important step hardest, most important thing you can do is to take that next step.
And actually, just to give you, your flowers, at the end of the day, what you're doing, you are taking a road less traveled. Mm-hmm. And with that being said, a lot of the principles that you're talking about right now regarding H2F are applicable to you as well. Because I do understand how lonely it could be when you're taking on new initiatives and you bring in a new concept that very well. You have experienced it 12 years. You was part of the foundations of MFT. You had an epiphany on what changed your life to where you would give up your business to full pursuit in this passion. But you're doing an awesome job keep going, but your legacy is that you're shaping tomorrow. And the soldiers that you have with that connection with you, I hear it. People hear it. And the opportunity for soldiers to realize that it's okay to invest in yourself. It's okay to say, hey, let me look at how I'm doing things. If my back is hurting, that doesn't mean I'm ineffective. That means I just need to figure out what's going on. Let me get it fixed, and then let me figure out a way to sustain it to where I'm not constantly re-injuring myself. And the ability to be able to invest in yourself, and when most leaders chooses not to invest in themselves, because at the end of the day, you're always pouring out. But with the program that you're bringing, although it's difficult because people have a hard time saying, hey, I need some help. Whether that's outward, inwardly to someone else or even to themselves, we have a hard time saying that I need some help.
Yes, we do.
But the platform that you're providing, the website, the QR codes, the surveys, all of those things, even if it doesn't get back to you, people are on board. So keep up the great work.
I appreciate that, sir, and I appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. So thanks for coming out. We're going to have you more and more as a frequent guest. We have a lot of initiatives that we have to discuss, but I'm grateful for you bringing CTAS to our organization, to our formation, and I know that it's going to spread. It's going to get out to the other commands, and you're going to be a sought-after person, and all the content that you created is easy to regurgitate because you can just share it. And the leader has to just tailor it to their organization. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, sir. And I look forward to our future conversations. Let's help people.